Okay, welcome to another episode of the Brooks McDonald Show podcast. The Brooks McDonald Hour. The crazy discussions that may come before us, right?
There you go.
If you're first time listening to us, what we try to do is spend a little time discussing, lots of things in life, whether it be spirituality to life lessons to motivations. I've been to a lot of motivational events and heard a lot of great speakers, read a lot of great authors. There's a lot of them that just don't filter them through the lens of Christianity, and that's what I want this to be a place for. Whatever the discussions are, filtered back through some sort of lens of Christianity, or at least from an aspect of it's coming from a Christian perspective. Maybe we'll put it that way. Because even today's, I'm not going to reference a whole lot of scripture today, but I think it's from a Christian mindset that we walk through. So, I've got Tyler Milkey with me.
Yep.
Tyler, faithful man in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, all around, whether it be casting this really cool blue hue we have
that
behind
I spent
us,
way too much time on.
to even if you watched our last episode, the nice little quotes that come across the bottom. Just thank Tyler. That's not Brooks.
Getting a little better.
Yeah. I just talk.
I
did plug a plug-in.
Yeah, the computer's in front of you, but you don't know anything. He has no idea what's happening on the computer right now.
So today we want to have a discussion around what would we tell our 20-year-old selves, or what's a lesson for 20-year-olds. And I have a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old. Tyler, remind the audience your children's ages.
5, 2, and 0.
5, 2, and 0. So I have this constant piece about thought process around, really, in my opinion, even in our Christian walk, one of our number one obligations or responsibilities or jobs is parenthood, raising the next generation of adults that are going to give back and be Christ in the world. And so I think about that. If you follow my journey and why I'm living in Florida from Tennessee, I had all these people that had adult children look at, say, Brooks, don't blink. It goes by super fast. It's going to be gone quickly. And I was in the throes of a very active business career, still is active, but in a different way. I was doing a lot more to have a lot higher income and with less staff people. And after hearing all that, I said, you know what? We built a management team that could run day-to-day operations. And yes, I took a hit on income, but it gave me a lot more time freedom to do what I love, which is more the mergers and acquisitions, but mainly also to spend more quality time with my children and my wife and my family. And so this is a really important subject to me and to all parents, honestly. But if we're thinking about, if we challenge a 20-year-old to say, hey, John, you're 20, could you have a discussion in your head with your 80-year-old self, and what would he encourage you to do? And today we're going to reference a few books that kind of have discussions around that, and have a discussion around what would we tell a 20-year-old and what should they do in life. I think old guard life would have said, get out of high school, go straight into college or into a tech program to learn immediately and start pouring into your lifelong career. And this career is going to be the one you are going to do till age 65. That's when retirement hits. That's right around when Social Security happens. And then you retire and you can think about other things. But probably if you're out there, if you have a 20-year-old or a niece, nephew, child, your 20s yourself, that doesn't line up with everybody. Some people it does. Some people, I see a burning passion of where people have gone to, and they've stuck to that passion all their life and poured into people, and God love them for it. But there's a lot of people that don't. There's a lot of 20-year-olds out there that don't feel that way.
There's more people going into college don't know what they're going to do. They just feel like this is what they're supposed to do, but they haven't really even experienced it. They don't even, the career that they're supposedly going for, they have no real world experience of even trying it to know if it's something they want to do forever. And how many people go to college, get a degree, they feel like they have to go get the job in the field that they go into, or that they've got their degree in, and they end up hating it. But they're stuck and they're there forever.
Right.
And,
they
didn't experience anything else.
Yeah. So my discussions with my children are around, one, I was 21, Carrie Beth was 20 when we got married. And so we were married young. And I do tell my kids actively, look, you don't have to get married that young. And we both said, we laugh, and they're like, well, you were. Like, yeah, but if you look at statistical averages, we beat a lot of averages. And, you don't have to feel obligated to that. Now, if you find the love of your life to spend with, that's awesome. The advice still can work, but don't feel like you're rushed. There still's life. What I learned was, especially I grew up in a real Church of Christ. I grew up in the Church of Christ community, and there was a lot of very young marrieds. Even at the church we go to at Destiny, I noticed a lot of young marrieds, young 20s, versus once I got out in other places or in Nashville, that didn't happen as much. It was a lot more getting married at 30. I'm not telling you which the right answer is. I'm just giving you some perspective, and even what I'm telling my children, okay? And so some of that conversation more pours into not only living some in your 20s, but exploring what you really want to do. And ultimately, what I would love for my children to do is to have 3, 4, 5 internships in different, and mentees, mentoring underneath some really good people in areas that they think they would go. So there's a book I read called Die with Zero, and his discussion is around in your 20s. He segments life based on statistical averages. It says you're more likely in your 20s to be able to have the time freedom without children and such to go travel. You're healthy. You don't have to eat a whole lot. Your metabolism's still high, so you don't have to watch your diet even as much. So buying a cheap ticket to Europe and living in hostels, traveling around, it's going to cost you probably 5 times that much when you're in your 30s or 40s with children, and with the food and what you can do. And safety wise, I think about my 9-year-old. Now I got to think about 9-year-old when I travel and her safety and what she's around, versus if I was a 22-year-old dude with some friends, no, nobody's going to mess with us. They're more worried about me messing with them. And so traveling and taking in life. But Tyler, there's a discussion in there, I think, about there's a level that the world gives. It's just chase your joy, chase your fun. And there's, I don't want to give advice to the extreme to where it's like, I think the word may be flippant.
Yeah.
You know, and
it's like, how do you frame this discussion around do a lot of things and experience a lot of stuff, but also be really focused and intentional?
Yeah.
So, you know, and we talked about this in other podcasts of like what 3 months can be like in your life. And you kind of hinted on it of just mentoring. And there's, I don't feel like there's a lot of focus on like go to school, but there's really not a lot of focus on find somebody that is really good at that craft that you might be interested in and learn under them. Even if it's for free, even if you don't make anything, but you get to shadow them and you can work as a barista just to live your life and experience that for a few months of you might just pick up a ton of great skills, which is great, but it might be something where you go, oh, this is something I really want to get into. Or alternatively, it could save you of going, oh, I really don't like this work. This isn't for me. I'm not good at it. And I almost pursued like a trade school or all this other stuff and spent all this money. How much cheaper would it be? Just put your life into like 3 months and find somebody that can help you and teach you this craft.
Well, it's almost like we're wanting a 20-year-old to have a later in life, middle-aged perspective.
Yeah.
And that's what we're truly trying to give that perspective to your 20-year-olds is that how do you walk through life but be intentional? Because if I was to frame it out, it would be around spending time more reading and learning. I found a love for reading way later in life. And my son recently said, I love reading. I'm like, that's one of my that's like a huge check mark for me. Netflix documentaries and all that, and even podcasts, you may feel or replace reading, but my challenge to you is the creative mind and where your mind can go and dream is bigger when you read. Your mind can stop after a sentence and think about something and then pick it back up. When you Netflix, you're not going to pause it. You're not going to hit pause when you're thinking. When you're reading, whether it's fiction where your brain is creating the background using the words, or in a self-help books, trying to let you think about what you would do. And then only not keeping your mind sharp. Gandhi says a quote, live like today's your last day, but learn like you're going to live forever. And I think constantly consuming and reading books would have been one area for me in my 20s that I would have wanted to spend time on. Also, working really hard and saving money. And that's one key I want to point out is you can still enjoy life and save money. I don't think there's a better time in the world right now for a 20-somethings that's got a hair bit of work ethic, because compensation is its highest. There's a water park close to us And I heard of this guy's son is 16 in high school. It's getting paid $16 an hour to stand at the top of a water slide and tell the kid when to go down. I mean, I was at $7 an hour. It's not, yes, I'm a little older, but it hasn't tracked that fast with inflation. It is, starting wages is going up so much. So if you got a little hustle in you and a strong back, which you can do some of that manual labor side, there's no reason not to save. So learning and reading.
It's a good principle just to live throughout, because if you start when you're young of just living slightly under your means,
yes,
it's so much easier to continue that through. Whereas if you start when you're young of living over your means, all of a sudden the over your means with 3 kids and a wife and a house and a this, and you're like, oh, I'm thousands of dollars, not tens of dollars over my budget. Yeah. And if you flip that mindset, it's so much easier to stay within, you don't need all the coffees, you don't need all the things, you know, and it's easier when you're young, even if it's very minute, just to save a little bit and keep that mindset throughout. And I like, we were talking about this before, but the just kind of taking the pressure off of it. You know, when you're young, you feel like you gotta know what you want to do and go into college and try to conquer all these things. But sometimes it's just, or get married and find a spouse and all these different things, but maybe just taking the pressure off it. And if we can bring it back to a Christian perspective of just focusing on your relationship with God and experiencing things in life, you know, there's so much that can be gotten out of that, you know, versus, you know, tons of school debt and everything else of feeling like I gotta go and I gotta like do all these things and get started, when really you need to take a step back and work on your relationship with God and work on your own self before you can start to go out. Because the things that I do today are completely different from the things I thought I would do when I was 18 and things I was moving towards when I was 18. You know, it's a completely, and I'm so happy that it is, because I have so much more flexibility, so much more freedom, and I'm making more money now than I've ever made.
Yeah. Yeah. You know? That's the key.
But as I've gotten older, the more I've taken pressure off it, the more I've put emphasis on my relationship with God and let Him work things out, the easier it's gotten. And the more I try to take control and drive into something and think this is just what everyone does, is what I'm supposed to do, the more that it's been hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So learning, working hard and saving money and tithing, and a good habit of that, and then traveling. And so how would you say, well, what, you get into a job, you got to work. I mean, you just got to pay your dues. Well, that's if you're an employee at a place, but I would challenge you to think creatively. First of all, like down here, there's a summer season. If you showed up in Florida and you wanted to work from no April through October,
if you're breathing, you can work around here.
Yeah, I was on a deep sea boat a few days ago, and he works from April to October, and the rest he's off. Now I don't know if he works elsewhere, but he doesn't do that. But he's probably making $700-800 a day in tips on those boats. Now he's busting it. He's in the sun all day. He's hustling. God bless it. It's tough, but he's probably in his 30s, but some of those guys are in their mid 20s doing that. I was up in Mackinac Island. There's a Filipino guy behind the bar, and he works at Mackinac from April to October. And then he goes to Key Largo from October to April and works at 2 sister resorts, spending time working. Now I don't know if he has family or whatever that is, but I'm just challenging. These are things like, man, you could do this when you're in your 20s. So you're learning, but also I loved what you said about learning, finding mentors and asking. Remember, if you reflect back on one of my earlier podcasts, I talked about bugging some guys that were in my field in the insurance world until finally they let me come and shadow them for a day, because the amount of information I got in that one day was action-packed. Tony Robbins says proximity is power. And so even I've heard you talk about before how the time spent under a mentor made you accelerate your learning so quickly.
Oh yeah.
So not only you get better as an individual, but also when you know these people that are big in your field, guess who kind of gets their applications moved to the top of the list or gets all the opportunities? It's proximity's power. It's being around these people, and sometimes it's not what you know, but who you know. That's a really big piece to surround yourself with those mentors. And so one thing what if you did find the love of your life at 20 and got married? Well, in the financial planning world, we call that DINK, D-I-N-K, dual income, no kids. And that's another place where it's like, I'm like, look at somebody with no kids and they say they're too busy to show up to something. I'm like, oh,
you
that's
don't even
funny.
have a clue.
Yeah, I always say you don't know how selfish you are until you have children. It's not a rude statement. It just is. You don't realize how much time freedom that you had to now juggle with other people that you thought was pretty overwhelming before. It's just perspective. It's like
because kids take everything. You have to take care of them. Like they take everything out of you, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So
and you grow.
What if you had a kid young, or what if you're in your 40s and you're listening to this? It's not too late or too early. It's not only one size fits all. You just got to be a little more creative with your time.
And even I was thinking about this when you were talking, about kind of being intentional in some of this stuff. Everything you do, you can have a choice of like, I'm just going to be the employee here and I'm just going to do my job and be done with it. Or you can have the ability to like, no, I'm going to dig in, I'm going to learn, I'm going to go deeper. It could be something as simple as working at a retail store for a little like local chain or something, or for a little local like, boutique shop or something. Yeah, you could show up and just check people out, look at Instagram all day and be done with it. Or you could actually look at the styles they're picking, figure out who's buying what and what's buying the most, understand with the owner where they're buying this stuff. Where are they going to these trade shows? Oh, can I go with you on your next thing? So I can see like how you're bartering and how you're buying. And within a few years, you've picked up the skills now to be a general manager or open your own shop.
Yep.
And you just in a small amount of time, the mindset shift of I'm just going to be an employee and check somebody out, or no, I'm going to dig into this and learn everything I can about this so that I can apply this to something I can do in the future and have more of a deeper skill set there.
And that
same
was all
job,
perspective.
2 different mindsets. That's and perspective,
right? And I love what you just said. And sometimes it takes that other party, that other bystander to tell you, because you're just like, oh, I just got to show up. This manager's really annoying. That's all you think about. And I just want to go home. I'm tired of this. But what perspective could you bring and say, hey, how could I learn? But also, how can I be Christ today? God calls us to work with a joyful heart and put all our effort into that. And what you're saying, I think all your effort, God rewards you, because if you have the mindset open to learn, it's going to prepare you for greater things along the way.
Well, it's the Bible says, do everything unto the Lord instead of unto men. And it's just a simple mindset. If I'm doing this unto God, I'm going to do the best I can. If you really, truly take that to heart, I'm going to do it the best of my ability. And you'll always succeed. You'll always have more jobs. You'll always have more work. If you do the best you can possibly do because you're doing it out of joy to the Lord, of the position that he's put you in or the place that you're in life, you will never run out of things to do or things to learn.
Yeah.
Because people will see that.
Yeah. And the other piece is with your saving is start side hustles or investing. Property is a great place to invest. Now, property is expensive right now. Rates are going up. But also I've heard crazy increases in rents and the cost of rent as well.
There's rent bidding wars going on right now.
Well, because of when people can't buy, now they're renting. And so an example for you in my life, and it's very simple because it doesn't involve a mortgage. I was able to pay cash for it. But my wife's grandparents' house up in rural Tennessee, we bought that house actually from her parents, and it's a rental house for us now. And if it had a mortgage, I probably would have been more aggressive at finding some other property that's rents were good. But the property itself is at the time was in like the $90,000 something range, and the rent's $675. It's had the same tenant in it for 9 years straight. So the rate for the rent is way under, but also I love having a tenant that's already been there for a lot of years. I don't want to run them out. So it probably could get closer to 800 maybe, but we've kind of just been as is with those people.
Yeah.
That property, every month I get $675 in the mail. It's mailbox money. And that's what in your 20s, if you've never heard the word mailbox money, that's your ultimate go-to. That means money comes to you and you didn't have to put out a whole lot of effort to get it. Time freedom is what I always preach to people. And so,
and it is attainable. It's just trying to find those opportunities and being intentional. I mean, Graham Stephan, I think is his name, but he's in his 20s and he started with rental properties and he sold his car. He did everything he could. He talks about his personal story of like, I scrounged together everything to buy this property. Now he's got tens of millions of dollars in a portfolio and tons of income. But his mindset was always live really frugally, live really below my means,
Yeah.
and find ways that I can have a rental income coming in
Sure.
and I can keep stacking and stacking and stacking. And my time doesn't have to necessarily keep stacking and stacking and stacking.
Yeah. And a podcast I could recommend for that is Bigger Pockets. That's a great one about real estate investing. So there's a lot of methods that they go through, like the BRRRR method: buy, remodel, refinance, repeat. So it allows you to access more capital within the home. If you're limited on initial capital, you buy a house at $40,000, put a lot of sweat equity into it. It appraises at $80,000. You're able to pull 80 or 90% of the money out, which just gave you enough down payment money to go buy another house. And you just repeat. So there's always that. There's a 1% rule to say, hey, look at properties to where you can rent it for 1% of your purchase price a month is what you try to get. If $100,000 house, try to get $1,000 a month. As I told you, I'm not doing that with mine, but especially with those types of limited pieces, that's a great way to build a portfolio. So start early. And I've talked about Marie Forleo's book last time, Everything's Figure Outable. I'm sure we'll reference it on the screen. But she talks about, what does she talk about?
Well, like you said, start when you're young.
Thank you.
I think is
the progress over perfection. One of her chapter pieces is progress over perfection. When you're young, you think, man, I'm not good enough. I can't figure this out. Yes, you could get into some funky spots, but find a mentor, find somebody that's invested in property, ask if they'll take you along and look with them and learn, and start small. A buddy of mine bought a $15,000 house in Memphis. It was Section 8 housing. Had to do a little bit of remodel to it. Was able to pay cash for it at that price, and got to where it was bringing in like $700-800 a month.
Yeah. And if you live in a bigger city, that's kind of hard to think of. But coming from Indiana, like Southern Indiana, I knew plenty of people that they were factory jobs, but they had a goal in mind. They kept buying rental properties, and they'd spend like 10 to 20 grand on a home, and rent it for $800 to $1,000 a month to college kids going to a college around there.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, dude, you're 35 and you work for a factory job making $25,000 a year or something, but I'm like, in 5 years, you're going to be a multimillionaire here with your portfolio. This is crazy.
And this is any age conversation. You can start this at any age.
It's just easier when you're young, because if you fail or you screw up, there's a lot less responsibility on you. When you got a wife and kids and all this stuff, the bar becomes higher of I don't want my kids to starve. I don't want my wife to starve. I don't want us to be homeless. But even when you're young and married, it's easy to. There's a lot of people living in vans nowadays. They're doing their thing, and they're able to make it work and make the best of it.
Sure. And so I know some young people. One that was on my team with me that's got 5-6 rental properties, and the whole idea would be they have goals, because whether it be replacing your income and being able to go out on your own, or really building something that's a legacy for your children later on. It can be a lot of ways. So real estate would be a big one that I would encourage people to look at as a side hustle. So when you're working with a job, but you're trying to figure out something else, but you could do whatever. That's the cool part too, is you could work 2 jobs. You don't have any kids. Like John Bevere was talking about in his X, Multiplying Your God-Given Gift, about how, you can, when he first started at the church, he was working 70, 80-hour weeks because he could. Him and his wife, they didn't have any children. They could really pour into their learning, which accelerates your learning ability, especially if it's done at one job. And there are places where you have to devote that just to one job. But as Marie Forleo said, I'll quote her again, she's a multi-passion entrepreneur. And I think that's where a lot of people we talked about earlier, there's sometimes where you could be successful at multiple things, just where you're dividing your time up to give to them. But you got to be creative. You got to work hard. You may have to own your own business. You may have to take risks. You may have to work seasonal work. But I encourage you in your 20s to think about that, not just think about where's the party at this week, and thinking short-sighted about, does this guy like me or not?
Yeah. You'll never look back on that when you get older and think, oh, I'm so glad I spent time on that.
Yeah.
Like, very few people look back on their college years. I wish I would have partied more. Or I loved those times. They look back and like, I wasted so much time.
Now it's talking about a month of going through Europe and looking, that's something you'll never forget. If it's going to the Grand Canyon that you've never been to, that's something you'll never forget. Going backpacking, those are memories. Other pieces of parties where people are time wasters, you're going to have to learn it to figure it out, but I'm trying to implore you to stay away and spend your time useful. But another place that I would challenge too is travel almost is never cheaper than before than now. Now you say, what are you talking about? Gas prices like at $5-6 a gallon in some
like
place.
Low cost airfare.
Yeah. So
there's so many ways to do things.
Yeah, Scott's Cheap Flights is a website we make in reference as well. I get emails from them as a little membership deal. Man, I see flights to Europe at $250, $300 round trip all the time, every day. I get offers for that. So you can totally do it. You can scrounge it up and work through it. So,
and it's, again, if you're young and you've got you got no like real responsibilities, like when it comes to kids and the other stuff, it's not unthinkable to think I'm going to fly over there and maybe find a job for a little bit so that I can move on to the next thing. I have known and grown up with people. There was a guy that backpacked through, Europe, and he was gone for years and all this stuff. Now he's making movies and doing all these crazy things. But he just had the attitude, I'm just going to go do it and backpack and live in hostels. And he had a ton of cool life experience. If you're a single woman, that might be a bit more difficult.
Yeah, there's other single women out there that want to do it. And I've known a few. I've got one where she did English as a second language or English classes over in Asia and things, or remotely. And she traveled, and she was traveling all over doing this from her computer, especially during COVID.
Yeah. That used to be China's a little bit weirder of a world now, but 10 or 15 years ago, maybe 20, it was a big push, and you could go over to China and live a great life just teaching English.
Yeah.
Just
huge remember,
opportunity there.
Once you get into a job, it's hard to get out. Once you get into a rhythm, and with kids, it's hard to leave it. It's very sticky. And so my encouragement is be creative with your work and you can always go back to the job. I've got team members, 70 of some odd of them, that some of them show up to a job every day and that's what they focus on, but they would probably give the same advice I'm giving to a younger version. They're just sticky and they're in what they know and they're experts in their field, and that's what they focus on. That I'm just encouraging you to say, hey, think outside the box before you go make those moves, because those will always be there waiting on you. There's no better time than now, where the shortage of labor, you can go get a job and work. So that's really what I wanted to share a conversation about today. Tyler, thank you. Hopefully that's helpful. One thing I do want to offer that Tyler, we didn't talk to about before, but Ed Mylett just wrote the book, The Power of One More. And I just want to offer that if you want a copy of that book, if you'll reach out to us, I'll buy the copy for you and I'll send it to you. Now, depending on where you're at, I may need you to participate in $10 in shipping or something, but it is my gift to you to let me buy the book and give you a copy of Ed Mylett's new book. If you ever heard the book of Think and Grow Rich, this is more an updated version with also a Christian filtered faith in there. So that's my offer to you. We'd love for you to subscribe, share it with other people. Thank you. If you're a repeat listener, it means the world. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great one.